Okay, well, we're back out here with the Toyota Pickup. For anyone who's following along, I wanted to give a little update, talk about my experiences with the Champion radiator and my little electric fan modification, and a couple issues I ran into. Overall, everything's running pretty good. I have some vibration problems, you know, the motor and it's transmitting through. I think I have kind of tracked it down to, I think it's the motor mounts are old, and so it's letting the motor vibrate too much. I was getting heavy duty vibration into the cabin. I think what was happening was on the header here, the LC engineering header, which I like very much, the flange, let me see if I can show you here. My workbench is a little bit of a mess, but so this flange that they use, the coupling flange on their header, was banging into the torsion rod, and you can see where I made an attempt to get some clearance there while I was testing it to see what was vibrating. So this was hitting on the torsion rod, and I think the reason it was hitting and I was getting so much vibration was because I think maybe like the motor mounts are shot on my truck, so I've got a set of new motor mounts coming. In the end, I just cut this off and I used a slip fitting that I got from Stainless Bros. A real great supplier of stainless steel. Let me see if I can get in here and show you what I ended up doing. So, okay, let me get on my back here. So what I ended up doing was, you can kind of see right here, this is where their flange, the header flange, going around here maybe. You can see this is where their header flange used to be, and I ended up cutting it out. I put a slip fitting that goes directly on the header, 2 1/4 inch, and a Micolor band clamp, and then clamped that down, and then I just welded. And the reason it's welded in 2 stages is that's not how I would normally do it. But the only slip fitting I had left in the shop was this one, and I had already welded something into it before, so I had to just weld another piece to make it the right length. Otherwise, I would have done one span there. But this was the only, after doing the whole exhaust, this was the only one that was left. But it came out okay, and you can see now I have a lot more clearance. I can put my finger in here. Before, it was, you know, probably about 1/3 of that clearance, and I think with the motor rattling around and stuff, it was hitting this and transferring a lot of vibration into the cab. The other thing I discovered while I was working, and let me see if I can kind of get over here and show you what I'm talking about. Excuse the crazy panning around. On my hanger, let me see if I can get a right angle there. On my hanger back here, I had tapped into this hanger on the frame, and then I welded this little loop up and over affair. And this little guy here, I didn't realize it during working on the exhaust system, but this little piece was out, and I think this exhaust was banging into that and transmitting noise. Also on the cross member here, I relieved a little bit with a die grinder and then repainted it to give just a little extra clearance here, although I don't think that was giving me problems. So I'm just kind of going through the truck and trying to dial in some of these little sketchy things. I got a problem back here with my differential. It's whining. I spoke to the guys down at Weddell Industries who did the gear polishing and said, you know, is the whining because of me polishing all the gears using rim finishing, or is it because I don't know how to set up my differential pinion height? And they said, yeah, I probably should be more quiet with the polished gears actually. And I said, okay, well, that's what I thought. Well, I don't know what I'm doing when I'm setting up my differential. So I got to pull the differential back apart. At some point I'm going to put an E-locker back here with 373 gears. Right now I'm running 307 gears. So, you know, the theoretical top speed of my truck is about 210 miles an hour, which I don't think I'll be seeing anytime soon with 100 horsepower. The brakes, I will say that my Willwood brake upgrade, now that I got it on the road and bedded in the brakes and everything, is pretty phenomenal. You just breathe on the pedal and the truck comes to a screeching halt. You can be going 60 miles an hour and you just you know, lightly get on the thing, it locks the wheels up and stuff. So you got to be careful. I'm running a race compound. I forget which pad it is exactly, but it's not their street pad, I'll tell you that. It's a track pad. The name of the pad escapes me at the moment, but I think I might actually have to downgrade to just the BP10, I think it is, or the BP20. I'm running, like I say, a very aggressive race pad. But, and then, you know, sometimes when the pads aren't at the right temperature, they squeak, you know. Sounds like a kid's bicycle when the you know, the calipers brakes are out of alignment. That's what it sounded like when my truck stops. I don't personally mind it. My Ferraris and stuff had racing brakes, and I kind of like the squeaky noise, but people will say, hey, you got to get those brakes fixed when I pull up to a signal. So anyway, so like I say, I think my motor mounts are shot. So I've got some new factory motor mounts coming. And I think that's going to address a lot of the vibration issues that I have been dealing with, and also keeping the exhaust system from banging into the frame, and the torsion rod will probably go a long way. Okay, what I wanted to talk about mainly was the radiator cooling issue that I ran into. So originally in here, and as you might have seen from my other videos, let me pan around here a little bit. I set up an electric SPAL fan, so I'm just running a single belt down there. Oh, and I did end up switching back to the factory harmonic damper. I was running the LC engineering kind of reduced front damper. It worked okay. I thought it might be the culprit for the vibration, but I don't think it was. But I ended up going back to the front harmonic balancer just to kind of smooth things out. I don't think it really made any difference either way. I was talking to Tony over at LC Engineering, getting his opinion on it. At the end of the day, I think my vibration issues stem more from the motor mounts and the clearance issues I had on the exhaust than anything else. So. But now that I've got it back together with this, I think I'm just going to leave it that way, so that, you know, the RPMs and the circulation of the water pump is, you know, a little bit faster. The other thing I noticed was if you see my alternator down in there, let me come around here. If you see my alternator down in here, I have a 140 amp alternator, and I noticed that with the bigger front pulley, it kicks out more like 13.9 volts. When the car's doing its thing, and so that seems to charge up my beloved Braille battery here a little bit better. And this battery's been really fantastic. I'm super thrilled with it. The voltage has been up around 13.5 and above, you know, and it's really just been great. I'm so thrilled with this. I can't say enough good things about that battery, the G30. So, but back to the cooling stuff. So here's the problem I had. I have a fan switch that turns on the fan at about 185. Okay, that's a SPAL switch that turns on the fan. So it's sensing the water coming out of the thermostat. And then when it gets to about 185 or something like that, 190, it turns the fan on. Okay, I had previously been running an 88 degree Celsius thermostat, which is about 190 degrees. So I was having a lot of problems with the fan coming on even on the road. And so I have a thing here, I have an AEM oil temperature gauge off the galley here. So if you look kind of down in there, there's like a little sensor that goes into my oil galley, and it monitors the temperature of the oil. So in addition to the water temperature, I monitor the motor as I'm driving along with the oil temperature, because I believe the oil reflects the temperature, the true temperature of the motor a little more rapidly than the water. So I like to monitor the oil temperature, not so much the coolant temperature. So I was seeing oil temperatures up around, 185, which is a little higher than I wanted to see. And the reason, and then, I would have, when I was driving along the road with air flowing through the radiator, I wasn't really doing a great job of cooling the motor down, and the fan was coming on all the time and stuff. So I was thinking, what have I done wrong here, And the radiator itself really is great. So I thought, well, I think what I have is I have an issue where I have a dual going on between the fan switch level and the opening of the thermostat. And so the conclusion I finally came to was, here's what's going on. The radiator's here waiting for coolant to go through and cool the motor down. However, the thermostat's not allowing water to get out there until clear up to about 190 degrees. And so when it finally opens and allows coolant to flow, the temperature of the motor is already to the point where the fan will come on. So as soon as the motor gets up to temperature, and we're already at a situation where it's kind of hot and the fan would normally come in to cool things down, I kind of have this battle going on between when the fan came on and when water was allowed to go into the radiator. So it was kind of one of those situations where when the motor got to 180, 190, then the thermostat would finally say, okay, you know what? Hey, how about we put some water out in the radiator? Well, by that time the fan had already said, oh my gosh, you need more cooling, with airflow. Well, not really. I got airflow from driving on the highway, but the temperature was so close to where the fan came on, the fan kind of didn't know, the fan switch was like, we don't have any water flowing. No, we do have water flowing, but it's too hot. So what I did was I opened this back up real fast and I put in a 170 thermostat. So that was just night and day difference with regard to the operating temperature and how well things function. So the second I did that, here's what happened. When the motor would start to get up to around 170, which is well below where the fan comes on at almost 200, then coolant would start to circulate as I'm driving, and then the 170, 180 degree coolant is now starting to be kicked out through the thermostat into the radiator, and the radiator does a terrific job of cooling things down on the road. So just, moderate airflow at 40 miles an hour, 30 miles an hour is enough to get the heat out of the system. And the thermostat is opening at, 170, 175 and starting to let some of that hot water return back to the motor cooling down. And so that gives kind of a nice little area where you get that balancing act with the fan and the thermostat, which is well below the threshold of where the fan goes on. So then the fan is like, oh, okay, cool. The radiator is doing its job with whatever airflow you're giving it. And, we're here in case the airflow stops up at the 185 level, then we'll get in there and start adding to the airflow. So the thermostat, because the water's flowing at 170 and at 175, I would imagine it's completely fully open. That's allowing the radiator to cool the motor down. So the result is that my oil temperature while driving went from, being 185, 187 sort of thing. It's dropped clear down into kind of the 150 range under most cruising conditions. So I'm super thrilled about that. And I no longer have this kind of contention between the fan battling, when the thermostat comes on and all that stuff. So for anybody out there trying to get their, if you're putting on an electric fan, or even if you're not, having that 170 degree radiator, and I think it was MotoRad was the one that I ended up using, having that 170 in there as opposed to like the 180 thermostat it's just night and day difference. So any of you guys having overheating issues, or you're wondering why things are always kind of running hot, that might be something to look into. Now if you have a mechanical fan, you may not even ever even think twice about it, because the mechanical fan is kind of always spinning anyway. Now I did away with the mechanical fan because I'm trying to get like the utmost miles per gallon. I'm shooting for 38 miles per gallon on this little truck here with my gearing and no power steering and all that sort of stuff. So I don't know what the miles per gallon are yet because I haven't driven the truck far enough, and I have speedometer and fuel gauge issues and stuff. But I'm shooting for 35, 38 on the highway, and part of that is getting rid of the drag from the fan. So if you have a mechanical fan, you're probably not going to even really be thinking about, well, when is hot water going in the radiator, when is the fan turning on, because the fan's always on when you're going slow. But because I ran into that kind of a situation where it manifested itself as electric fan on all the time, I thought, oh, that's interesting, and so that 170 thermostat really was night and day difference. So like I say, that really kind of showed itself in terms of the the oil temperature over here, which is what I monitor. And just here, let me turn on the power to the truck here real quick in case you're curious what I'm talking about. So if you look at my gauges that I'm working on here, so on the left I have an AEM oil temperature gauge. Okay, so that's off the galley, and that lets me see kind of what the temperature of the oil is, which reacts a little more quickly, I think, than the temperature of the water does. And then over here, it's kind of doesn't have a reading right now, but it's that's my wideband oxygen sensor right off the end of the header collector. So that tells me, is the ECU of the computer correctly balancing the combustion in the cylinders and getting us a stoichiometric reading, or a lambda reading rather, that represents the stoichiometric efficiency kind of what the computer's mixing in the fuel and air. So, and then that one on the far right, that's a pressure gauge that's off the back side of the fuel rail, so I'm able to monitor my fuel pressure. So as I drive and stuff. So, and then I have some other gauges I'm going to toss in the mix. And for anyone who's curious, yes, I did fix my fuel gauge and got it working. It was, if you watch my other video about how I inadvertently destroyed that, I did get another gauge and put it in and calibrate it, and it seems to be, everything seems to be working. So, all right, let me turn the power off here. And I'll say for anyone, I'm real impressed with these AEM gauges. It's a real nice addition to be able, I monitor them all the time when I'm driving along. It's a real nice addition. The only thing I didn't care for too much on the AEM gauges was their little sheathing that they put in the wiring harness could be a lot more heat resistant, because it just, to me, it seems a little on the cheap side, but that's just a small complaint. On a lot of the gauges, on a lot of the AEM gauge harnesses that I did, I put my own high temperature sheathing over it, but I was kind of surprised at how low temperature their sheathing melted. I mean, even just something as simple as putting some heat shrink and shrinking it with a heat gun, it would melt their sheathing. So if any of the techs from AEM happen to be watching my video, step it up over there with your supplier when it comes to your wire harness sheathing, okay? I think everybody would appreciate that. So that's the state of the pickup truck. I still got a little bit more wiring to do. Another thing I will touch on is you can see I changed over to this, and I'm running LEDs. I found some real nice LEDs on Amazon that do not require additional wiring, and they also do not require an integrated fan. So I'm pretty happy about that. And then these are just some eBay glass lenses that I bought. So real pleased with how that all turned out. The only thing that I ran into was my high beam indicator light on the dash no longer works, because Toyota did kind of a funky wiring thing if you look at the schematic. So I'm going to have to rewire the little high beam indicator. I might make a dedicated video to that, because I read on some of the reviews that people had that problem, and you know, unless you're very familiar with how to read electronics and schematics, it's fairly difficult to figure out why your high beam indicator no longer works. So, but overall, the truck's coming along almost all done here with everything in the motor compartment, and now we're just working on, you know, the push bar, the driving lights, you know, getting the exhaust. Not sure if I showed this. I took off my big, huge, vibrant exhaust, you know, in the back, because I think I was getting too much back pressure. And then I'm just going to put a little glass pack. I'm running let's see, I'll show this here. I'm running just a straight pipe. That's where the muffler used to be. So that's about an 18-inch span. And I'm gonna probably just toss a glass pack in there and quiet things down. Because right now, without the big muffler on the back, there's a pretty raspy tone, you know, and I'm getting cracking and popping and backfiring and stuff. So I'm going to put the glass pack on, and then that should get a good balance between flow, exhaust flow, and sound. So that'll be coming up. So that's where things are. Like I say, the main point of the video was just to discuss kind of, you know, the benefits that I encountered running 170 degree coolant, thermostat rather, versus 180. So I'm going to make that kind of the subject of the video on the description. So for any of you guys having, you know, kind of overheating problems, or you just want to see what it's like to have your truck run at a cooler temperature, I highly recommend the MotoRad thermostat. And I'll definitely put the link to where I got it in the description for any of you guys who want to try it out. So, like I say, night and day difference. All right, well, I hope you've enjoyed the video here. As always, feel free to use the comment section below. Click like and consider subscribing. That helps the channel out immensely. Speaking of channels, don't forget I have a new channel that I'm trying to get rolling here a little bit. It's called Stories by Ray. I'll check my recent videos, or I'll put a link in the description over to my other channel. And that's a channel where I just kind of tell some of the more interesting stories from my life and things I've been through and stuff I've learned along the way that I wish I had known when I was much younger. So if you like the content on this channel, be sure to check that other one out too. Okay, thanks a lot for watching.